Good evening. This time last year, I got dog's abuse for daring to cover the Huw Edwards story and ask important questions about a man who was the face of the BBC and one of the highest paid stars at the corporation. The Sun newspaper's brave public interest investigation discovered that Edwards had paid a vulnerable youngster a huge amount of money for explicit images, with the young person's worried parents saying his life had been ruined. Plus, there were serious allegations of inappropriate behaviour towards BBC colleagues. So call me old-fashioned, but I thought it was worthy of comment. After the shocking news today that Edwards has pleaded guilty to looking at images of child abuse, I'm glad that I stood my ground. I'm glad that I reported the story on this show. Fair play to my team, Liam and the gang, for working on this with me, and the channel itself, GBNews, for being so strong on this. Here is an excerpt from my opening monologue on the 13th of July of last year, 2023. Suspect woke commentators, who can always be relied upon to pick the wrong side of any argument, seem to be rallying behind the beleaguered star.
I think it would be a crying shame if this is the last we see of Huw Edwards on television, when the allegations have turned out to be not that much.
But what we're seeing right now is the pompous, woke, Negroni-swilling establishment media elite closing ranks and protecting their own, as they always do. But the alleged victims, 7 and counting, must have a voice too. Well, the selective morality of woke media lovies has come back to haunt them. John Sopel, Emily Maitlis and others who condemned the Sun newspaper for their courageous journalism on the Edwards story, well, they've gone strangely quiet today. This story is, first and foremost, a nightmare for Edwards' victims in those horrific images. But it's also a nightmare for his well-heeled establishment mates who defended him. And it's a nightmare for the BBC, who sat on their hands for far too long as the serious allegations about one of their biggest stars mounted up. The truth is that channels like GBNews and papers like The Sun must always be free to speak truth to power and to investigate and call out the behaviour of the rich and famous, many of whom would have you believe that they are such better human beings than you and me. Will you tolerate any more smugness from the BBC now after the behaviour of one of their biggest stars, the man who was the face of the Queen's funeral, the King's coronation and the general election, and a now disgraced man who was paid almost £500,000 last year, including a 40 grand pay rise, whilst not even on air? Your money, by the way. Shame on Huw Edwards, and shame on those around him for seeking to suppress the truth.